Welcome to Discussions of Music, Healing, and Consciousness with your hosts, Chris Noble and Bill Paratzman. On this podcast, Chris and I offer a spontaneous, ongoing conversation about how music is intertwined with healing and consciousness. Our first season helped lay the foundation and build some of the superstructure for what we want to do here in Season 2, where we'll be welcoming some intriguing guests, going deeper into ancient mysteries and wisdom, and cultivating your background knowledge and curiosity. We hope these discussions will inspire your own study and practice of the musical and healing arts, and that your contribution to advancing world consciousness will be satisfying for you and transformative to those around you. Let's get started.
Like, it was interesting because I thought after this breathwork event, I'll be in such a zen state to then fall asleep, no problem. And of course, well, not of course, but interestingly, I think it might be the difference between facilitating versus participating.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're facilitating something or leading something, I think it's you definitely get a different, because there's a different intention maybe.
Yeah,
I think that's why you walk away feeling, at least for me when I'm doing my music meditations, it feels like pure service, and that's so fulfilling, but it's invigorating. You're like, oh yeah, I'm pumped. Even though, and then I think everyone else that participated is gonna had like the best sleep ever because they were in such a zen state. But I was on the opposite side where I'm like, let's go.
yeah. I get that too, because like you say, you're bringing a different energy when you're, performing than when you're just receiving. And that's the way it should be. I mean, we have to be able to do that. But yeah, it doesn't leave us in a very, like zoned out place afterward because we
I thought I would be like, oh, I'll have the best sleep ever. I participated a little bit in the breathwork component, and then I led the music meditation,
yeah,
and I was like, yeah, I've got all this awesome energy. There's about 25 of us there. It was like a good group, and so it was a lot of energy, and it was downtown Vancouver, so it was kind of cool. It was in this really interesting space, like in the financial district of this, major Canadian city, and then here we are doing breath work and having people have like psychedelic experiences with, it was a psychedelic breathwork event,
yeah,
and so a lot of DMT release and like really powerful transformation that people went through, and then I look around and I'm like, and I'm downtown in the financial district, bringing all this really awesome vibration to usually it's a more stressful, kind of chaotic
oh
core,
sure, yeah,
and it's kind of fun to be in that contrast. But yeah, it's just interesting, the energy. It's really something, and I think when you're doing things that are in alignment and that are, let's say, your soul's calling, perhaps, I think that in of itself is like injecting yourself with 18 espressos.
yeah, yeah. Well, now
Like, how
you're
do you,
now you
like,
know, right? So how do you
yeah,
prepare to catch that afterward? You go for a long run in the middle of the night, or
yeah, do you do a Bob Marley run where I think he would smoke a nice big joint at like midnight and then go for this run on a beach? I remember I had a gym trainer that was obsessed with that kind of ritual. He's like, he loved to have like sacred cannabis to then unlock a little bit of maybe his right brain, some creativity,
yeah,
and then just go for a run. Some people, I myself certainly included in that category, I can be very functional, very mobile with cannabis. Some others, of course, not at all. But I think Bob Marley was tapping into that one. Maybe after a gig, that's what he would do. So I might have to start trying that. I don't know, because
might have to
I
start.
could not fall asleep last night.
Well, fair word of warning. I'm discovering with microdose that I don't want booze. I really don't. You know, if I have some, it's like, that was nice. I don't want pot. I mean, it'd be nice to have the happy once in a while, and maybe that'll happen, but it's just like, I don't feel a need for it. And then
Mm,
the other thing, of course, that's really important to me is that those real deep depths of depression that I used to feel have smoothed out. I can still go there, like I can still be, but it's less overwhelming for me. And so like I'm looking at the trade-offs, right? I miss the happy pot high, but I don't mind not having the deep depression. There's
yeah.
some it's very, very curious to me. And I hadn't anticipated any of this. Okay, well, microdose and see what happens, right? And this is happening.
So,
And
sorry.
no, it's just that. And I still have, I still have the big experiences, but they sort of pale in comparison to the day to day. Is that a really poor sales pitch?
Not at all, actually. If anything, like I want to know more. So, what is your microdose regime right now? Like, what are you? How much do you take? Do you know what? Like, is there a specific blend that you're taking, and how often?
Right. So good questions. And I wish I had a better answer for you. I would have known those answers when I made all the capsules, but since then I haven't. So I get my own product and make my own capsules. I think I'm using penis envy right now.
That's a strong one.
And and it's strong. So one every 3 days or so is probably enough. If I feel it, I'm taking too much, so I try to keep it balanced around, and that varies, which is really interesting, and I understand very individual. So the amount that you need, to be able to sustain a microdose regime and how frequently you need to do it is highly dependent upon you. And it's not going to hurt you. So trial and error on this stuff, but please don't, operate heavy machinery or if you're feeling,
We can't fully, endorse these things on a
yeah,
professional level. But you're right. When you're microdosing, it is quite safe. If you're going to go down the psychedelic, and again, we're like, disclaimer, 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 we're not
yeah,
professionals, etc. But yeah, when you're doing like a point 1 gram, 0.25 grams, that's a very standard
yeah,
a dose per capsule, and that's like you take one of those, you'll be fine.
yeah. Generally speaking, I think that's about where I am. Although, you try to count to 100 and then divide by the how much it weighs on the scale, and like try to make it all as close as you possibly can. But yeah, so that, and it's really it's pointing more and more for me toward the need for the process of integration. And I get it. There are people out there that do ayahuasca twice a month or whatever, and if that's your thing, go for it. If you're a psychedelic thrill seeker, amazing.
A psychonaut.
A psychonaut. However, it's that whole up and down thing, like you experienced after the event last night. You came out of it at a different place, and you had a lot of release left to go. And I find the further I go down this road and listen to people and read all the stuff, that it's less and less about the clinical study and the effects and all of that. That's cool, and it's more and more about the long-term vision of what's happening, right? And anticipating that. I mean, like you and I are musicians, right? You probably could have anticipated that you were going to come out of the concert on this high, right? You wanted something else, but that's what you got. Okay, so fine, right? Well, now and that's integration. Because then you can say, okay, after a concert, I've got to smoke a big fatty and run on the beach, or whatever the response, whatever whatever it is that works for you, in order to like bring that in. And I think as a community, we need to do a better job encouraging our psychedelic brothers and sisters and we's and them's and whoever they are, to be aware of that, to think about that in advance of the event, and make plans for it. You know?
100%. And the really interesting thing is this event I was a part of, we had the option to microdose. We actually, because in Vancouver, it's a really interesting gray area in British Columbia because there's so much research being done at, the University of British Columbia and other, major institutions on psychedelics, on psilocybin. It's kind of where cannabis was here in Canada uh 5 6 years ago, roughly, when it was just on the verge of becoming legalized, but not quite, but it
Yeah.
kind of was. And it was a very funny place where when I was living at the time in Toronto, we'd go to a dispensary, and then the next day it would be raided by the cops, and then the next day it's back in action
Back
again,
in
and then it's
business, right?
and then
Yeah.
like a month later it's raided by the cops again, and then you're back in business, and it's just this hilarious push and pull then the cops are always like, ah, I guess we'll do it, because they all know it's going to become legalized, so it's like kind of stupid to bust people, but then it's a hilarious gray
Yeah.
area. And that right now psilocybin mushrooms are in that similar area, so there's actually storefronts in downtown Vancouver that sell
Okay.
mushrooms. They sell microdosing kits. There's a whole microdose delivery. And already, since I've been back from my travels from 6 months, just coming back to Vancouver, there's been like three, four, five new companies have just emerged all of a sudden. I mean, it's a boom in the psychedelic industry.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the forefront of the research is happening out here on the West Coast, not just in British Columbia, but I know in the US, like down in Washington State and
Sure.
probably California. I think there's some stuff going on too.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things happening.
Right. And so it's a really exciting time. And so we had sponsors for our event that were psychedelic mushroom companies,
Nice.
and people had the option if they wanted to take a point one. And we had a lot of guides, lot of it was there's a lot of support. It was a really well organized event, and most people I don't think took the microdose because we were doing an intensive hour and a half breathwork modality with, and then I led a music meditation for another hour after that, and then we had a wrap up slash semi ecstatic dance at the end. It was a very kind of intensive but awesome event,
Yeah.
and because of the people, and there's like 25 people in a large space all breathing together, you just get contact high. And I remember in that moment being like, I was off. They like the host as well. She's like, "Do you want a microdose as well?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And I'm usually like, I love microdosing, and I'm especially if someone's giving me like a free. And it looked like the microdosing here is really amazing because there's different companies that will do really interesting blends of different
Oh,
mushrooms.
nice.
So
Yeah.
yeah, they have some really cool ones where it's like you're gonna get, let's say, golden teacher is another strain of mushroom, psychedelic mushroom, just like Bill was mentioning with penis envy, which is a hilarious name, but
I
it's
know,
kind
isn't
of
it
just
though?
describing the phallic shape of the mushroom. There's other ones like I think there's like a Gandalf Lord of the Rings one. There's all these. There's all. It's just like with cannabis, right? You get these really
Yeah.
hilarious creative names. I love it. But anyway, I think it was Golden Teacher, which is a lighter one, which is a much more like a good introductory type of strain, and then it's mixed with chaga mushroom,
Mhm.
lion's mane mushroom, shiitake, and
So it's all
then
that medicinal is in there too.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like this awesome synthesis of not just the psilocybin, but then all because we know with fungi, there's so much medicinal quality in
Oh
different
my
types of
gosh. Yeah.
mushrooms,
It's
right?
amazing.
It's amazing. And so they blend like six, seven, eight different really healthy mushrooms together. So you get these like not just microdosing, but you're also getting it. So you might as well be taking your vitamins with these things.
Yep. Yep.
So they're really good
Yep.
quality, and I still said no, I don't want to, because I knew I was going to get really contact high with everybody, and I was not wrong. I got really high from everybody, and I felt like I was on a psychedelic. And isn't that interesting how we can completely get there with breath? And one of the facilitators was teaching me that when we're doing mouth breathing, which you don't really want to be breathing through your mouth on a day-to-day basis. It's actually not good for you at all. You want to breathe through your nose as much as you can, but when you're doing an intentional breath work, sometimes there's a benefit to doing mouth breathing. Obviously, the Wim Hof method is a famous method. Well, it's not his, but he's reinvented it from an ancient method. And they breathe through the mouth because what's happening when you're doing mouth breathing is you're actually activating the vagus nerve.
Hmm.
So I didn't
Hmm.
know that when the vagus nerve's activated, it's also helping with that DMT release and all of that stuff we would consider a psychedelic experience
Right.
is being activated by your breath. And of course, I already knew this, but it was just interesting to get even more information on the psychedelic experience of breathwork. And everyone there, I mean, when I was in the room participating in the breathwork component, I was just like, I feel like we may as well have just done a whole ayahuasca ceremony down in Peru or something. I know it's different, obviously. I mean, I just spoke to a friend who was at a 10-day ayahuasca retreat in Peru, and it's obviously a very different experience, but the feeling, the psychedelic feeling was so similar, and we did not need to take any plant medicine to really get there. And what a powerful experience breath is. It's just it blows my mind every time.
It's
It's
going to
power.
fall on musicians and breath workers and other people who are able to take a group to that place legally, without any
Yeah.
substances. But it's going to fall to us, and we need to be very responsible with that because it's a powerful place. And most of the time, it's good. But in my training, anyway, and at least through having read experiences and things like that, there are times where it can go off the rails. In a community, though, it's much better because, like you said, the contact high kind of carries that. So if you've got somebody who's, quote, having a bad trip, um, the love of the community and the support of the community that's around at that moment is, believe me, man, so much better than doing it on your own. I mean,
100%.
and as facilitators of that experience, you and me and everybody else who's doing this have a an implied kind of responsibility for the safety of everybody in the room. And we want to make sure that we're able to catch that. And this is something I thought about for a long, long time because I used to have intentionally, I used to get a therapist or two if I could find them to attend the concerts that I gave because there was music in there that was intended to trigger. And we wanted to have a way of catching that, in case somebody needed it. And I'd
Mm.
announce this, if you feel triggered by any of this, so and so is here, to help, and they'll just connect with them. Get up and leave if you have to. And I think that's a really beautiful way of being able to bring music deeper into the wellness realm. And of course, it's so necessary.
Well, it was really interesting, Bill. I had no idea how the event was going to go. Actually, everyone that I was involved in the event, I had never met before, so it was a really interesting experience to come to this thing with not even having met anyone, but kind of knowing intuitively that it was going to be awesome, and it was.
Yeah,
And it was really powerful to have the order. So we started with some conscious movement, and then we moved into the breath work, set our intentions. It was funny it was interesting in the event description. The organizer, she was great. She really recommended people bring like big blankets, pillows, and also a journal
nice.
because a lot of ideas do really come in, and there is something very therapeutic and analog about the writing in a journal rather than your phone and stuff. So a lot of people had that, and basically they went through the breath work and all had they some very shamanic experiences. People were shaking, yelling, crying. I mean, it was very, and I would say there was a more tame of other breath
Yeah,
works I've
that's
been which were can go even just really crazy, and that's it's welcomed, and actually it's encouraged, to be honest,
yeah,
because
it's safe.
yeah, exactly. And as they were explaining, when we go into these deep breath work modalities, our bodies, we're telling our bodies that they're safe, and then when our bodies actually feel truly safe, our subconscious is able to release all of this stuff that we don't even know is there.
So
And
true.
so it comes in the form of shaking, yelling, screaming, crying, burping, yawning, etc. I mean, infinite ways that our bodies can deal with these things. And then after all of that intensity, to then basically bathe them in sound for an hour
Yeah,
after that,
yeah,
it felt
perfect.
like it was so interesting. And I immediately, so everyone was just knocked out on the ground already, and then the facilitator started playing on her crystal bowls to kind of transition from breath work into the music meditation. And normally I give a whole spiel about 432 hertz and some binaural beats, solfeggio frequencies, yada yada yada, and then I guide them through a body scan to relax their bodies. I threw all that out the window because everyone was already in it. So I'm like, all right, I don't want to say anything. It was like the first music meditation where I didn't speak any words during the whole thing. It was truly all sound because I felt like anything I would have said as guidance was everyone was already on their journey. I'm like, I don't want to steer them. I want music to be that
Yeah,
non-linguistic but yet universal language
yeah,
that then they can let that lead them in their own journey. And it felt like what I was doing was creating like this sonic blanket and dome over everyone to then process and move through what they move through. And that was my intention. But then afterwards, to talk to the participants and hear just exactly like they're like, yeah, once the music started, my trip went from here to there, and then that here was different for everyone, and then the there was different for everyone because it's all a very individual experience. And it was just so interesting to feel that synthesis. And I think we're moving into an era where we're these hybrid events. I like that's what they feel like. They're a hybrid event. It's not just a music meditation, it's not just breath work, it's all these things. And that is becoming one of the most powerful healing mechanisms, expansion mechanisms, and also community building, because everyone
yeah,
that was there, like I got a lot of just amazing like phone numbers and contacts and just people that we connected deeply with in this 4.5 hour experience. And it's just so beautiful. And the last thing I loved hearing from one participant in particular, that she was like, oh my God, once you started playing the piano, I feel like I came into contact with an extraterrestrial at some
Oh, perfect.
and I was like, yes, amazing.
Yes,
That is always my goal.
that's what we want.
Yeah, bring in our cosmic brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.
So if people want to connect with one of these events the next time it happens, how do they do that?
Well, what we could do, Bill, is I've now got my calendar online for all my events, so we can put that in the show notes,
Oh,
and
good.
then people can check that out. I'll put my online and my in-person events on that calendar. It's always evolving and changing. And so I'll be putting I'm doing a summer tour with a singer-songwriter as well throughout July and August, and I'll put those dates up too because
Yeah.
we're starting to, even though he's a classic singer songwriter. His songs are very spiritually oriented, uplifting lyrics, but also he's incorporating more sound healing into his classic
This is beautiful.
folk rock, basically.
Yes, I
He's
love
like
it.
John. It's like John Mayer, Jack Johnson vibes, but
Yeah,
then we're bringing in, some meditation and some intentionality. And he's also Chinese, so he brings in his traditional Chinese
perfect.
aspects of his background, and he even has a traditional Chinese guitar called the zhou, and he brings that into it too. So we're even in this pop music setting, it's still becoming medicinal. I mean, it's the coolest thing ever. I love
That
it.
is so awesome and so necessary, in
Right?
our world.
It reminds me of again what you're doing. I loved that collab. I love that collab that you're doing with your friend on the Tibetan bowls.
Oh, right.
And
Ananda Maya.
oh my
Sure.
God, like that stuff to me just I can't wait to come down and visit you, Bill, and actually just lay down and receive that because it's so fun to facilitate, as we were saying at the beginning, but what it's such a different experience to really receive that. And I haven't actually fully received a hybrid event like what
Mhm.
you're doing before. And now after last night, knowing what it's like to be facilitating, I'm like, I want to know what it's like to receive though.
Yeah, I know. I do too. I mean, I've had a chance to receive the bowls, but it's receiving, when you're the one who's performing, that's a little wild. The other thing that's happening that's exciting in this space, and I don't want to miss this, the performance venue that you guys were in. So there are lots of non-traditional performance spaces opening up right now, specifically for this wonderful, I'll call it psychedelic informed journey. There's communities opening up spots. I'm familiar with one here in Southern California that's connected with an arts organization. And so the opportunities exist for having this experience in a way that is beyond the concert and beyond the retreat, shall we say. And even though it's people you've never met before, I think what you said about the community that coalesces after that is so key as well. It's a new kind of community that is just um, exploding. And what is it that we've needed after COVID more than anything else, right? Is a new kind of community that's not based on division and divisiveness and snarkiness and social media. This is authentic, man.
And exactly, it's based on the complete opposite of all those things, right? It's based on what do we have in common? And what we have in common is the human experience,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's not an easy one.
It's
And
not easy.
it's fun and it's beautiful and it's magical, but it's also definitely not easy. I always like to say, like, I think we're all expert souls, and that's why we've come here to be living this human experience. Because when you're really good at a game, you don't want to play on the beginner level. You want to play on the expert level, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's what we're really doing here because it is really challenging sometimes. But when we did a really simple sharing circle before we even started the breath work, and that as well is really powerful because you get to hear. All we did was like just what's your name, one word to describe how you're feeling right now, and one word to describe your intention, what you want to bring in. And it was just amazing to hear a lot of people. Some people were like, I'm exhausted. I'm
yeah,
just exhausted and I'm trying to
right.
bring in, I'm trying to bring in deep rest or something, or I'm really stressed and I'm trying to bring in clarity, or and you just get to hear from where everyone's at. And that in of itself is therapy when you're just hearing in real time and in real life in
Yeah.
the same room as that you're in. All these people kind of, we're all moving through similar things, and it's not so isolating. We're not alone on this journey, even though it can feel very isolating.
Well, we've sort of been taught to be isolated about it too,
Yeah,
right?
and like you said, the last couple years have only enhanced
No,
that,
it's
right?
yeah, it's just put us further and further back in our ivory towers. So this seems like an appropriate moment. We dropped an episode right before this one about how to connect desire and intention with music and the practice of that. And what you're describing here is essentially that, because you show up, and even if it's one word, in that one word is your energetic space. It doesn't matter what the word is. It could be explat, right? Whatever. But in that one word, you're putting all of your stuff and your intention for what happens next. And the event just delivers on that. It's psychically it does, but I think energetically it does, and even more important, I think spiritually it does. When you're willing to be vulnerable and safe, the universe delivers.
100%. And it's so clear. I always like to remind people the term abracadabra. It translates into as I speak, I create. And that's the basics of magic and manifestation. And the ancient Egyptians were very well aware of that. That's where the whole concept of magic and magicians even come from. And it's all about intention with attention.
Yeah.
So, and focusing on that one word and then saying that word with all the intention you have behind it, that's literally magic. And you're creating magic. And you can call it another thing. You can call it manifestation,
Yeah,
transformation,
call it magic.
metamorphosis.
But you
Whatever
notice the
works.
importance of it. It's organic. You mentioned bring something to write on. Don't write in your phone. Like that organic writing on paper or whatever you write on papyrus. The speaking, the sound of it, the organic emoting of the thing is so important. And without those organic um, modalities, let's call it modalities, I think we lose what we need most. I'm not going to complain here about apps because that's not the point. But if it gets organic, it can get into us. If it's an app, it might hit the head. It might be able to help us, breathe and do something else that helps the vagus nerve or the heart or some other way. But let's go right for the juice. Don't have to middleman it. You can go right for it.
And I believe that your memory retention works much more strongly when you're physically writing.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
totally.
they recommend even, for actors, like physically write out your lines.
Yep.
And it's just, you
Stuff
can,
you sing, you'll remember. So sing your grocery list.
it's
The
so
twinkle
true
twinkle little
though.
star or something, right? So yeah, keep it organic, people.
100%.
Keep it
Yeah.
real. Hey,
Keep it
let's
real.
wrap this because I know we want to do a couple of shorter episodes today, but I will put Chris's calendar will be in the show notes if you're listening or watching. Check into that because you don't want to miss another one of these 4.5 hour events. If you can catch one, you're gonna want to be there, right? You're gonna want to be in the room.
100%. And these things are really amazing in person. They really are. We've been doing so much Zoom stuff, of course, over the last couple of years. And you know what? When you can't be there in person, obviously it's still great. Like I've done breathwork events online, and they've been powerful. Don't get me wrong. And I recommend everyone just do it in whatever capacity you can.
Yeah,
But yeah, the in person is really powerful. And even if it's not through me, look on Meetup.ca or Eventbrite or something where Facebook, for crying out loud, anything in your local area, and look for breathwork events because they are happening everywhere now. It is a huge, huge trend, and thank God it's a great trend. I don't see it going away anytime soon. It's breathing. I mean, let's be honest.
yeah.
That's not exactly a trend that we can afford to
Right,
lose.
right. I love it.
But you know what I mean? So even if it's not me, look into your local area or check out Bill and maybe some of his hybrid events he's doing because it's just it's the medicine. I gotta say when I'm doing these things and when I get paid at the end of them, I literally feel like, oh right, yeah, money. And it's not from a scarcity mindset. I'm all about getting compensated for our worth and our energy, but it feels like, especially in these kind of events, like this is giving back to humanity. This just feels so right. Feels
Yeah.
so right.
It feels entirely reciprocal to me, man.
Exactly.
You know?
So check it out, everyone. Start
Yeah,
breathing intentionally and see what happens. Let us know in the comments how you're feeling and how you've shifted your life because of just something as simple as conscious breathing. Let us know.
definitely.
All right, we'll
Aho.
catch you next time. Aho, everyone.